The James Harden era has officially begun, and it did not start out on the right foot with the Clippers getting absolutely walloped by the Knicks in what was their worst loss of the season. What went wrong? What can they fix? Is it time to panic and say we made the wrong move, or is it too early to draw conclusions like that? Gonna be talking about it all on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, and in my 19th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcast, and I want you to let me know what you thought of the debut. Did it seem like, if you were pro-trade, did you like what you saw? Do you think it's just a matter of time? If you were anti-trade, does this make you feel even more confident of why you didn't want the trade? Just give me your thoughts on this game. I know you guys are going to have some, so I'm looking forward to hearing it. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. Wow. Let's get into this one, though. So much to talk about. James Harden's debut, absolutely surreal. 4 future Hall of Famers wearing Clipper jerseys. It was something else. But let's talk about the basketball. I want to begin with Harden because it was his night, right? I actually really liked the way he was buying in. And I'm not, if you go actually back and listen to what I was saying before the trade and when we got him, it's not that I didn't think he could buy in. I'll tell you what I was worried about. But I liked what I saw in the sense that in the first quarter, everybody was getting after it defensively. Even James Harden getting into his defender or getting into his man. The game started with Zoo guarding Mitchell Robinson, Harden guarding Quentin Grimes, Kawhi guarding Julius Randle, Paul George guarding RJ Barrett, and Westbrook guarding Brunson. And then we switched 1 through 4. The tough part with that is you are now putting the onus on your best 4 players to guard on the perimeter, and it's a lot of work for them. Whereas before, your idea of having Terrence Mann or Robert Covington guarding certain guys at the point of attack, and then you had Kawhi sometimes resting more, Paul George sometimes resting more, and now you have a guy in Harden that team's going to look to attack. Between Russ and Harden, team's going to try to put them in the pick and roll, and your defense just inherently got worse when you bring in Harden as opposed to Covington. Now, I liked Harden's effort. He was still trying, and in the first quarter, you saw that the Clippers were using Russ as the ball handler. And James Harden was sitting in the corner, came off 1 or 2 screens, set 1 or 2, and when I say set, I'm using it lightly. He didn't really make much contact on any of the screens, but he was at least trying to adapt. However, it just feels a little unnatural because James Harden is so good with the ball in his hands. And weirdly, in this game, I think he was the best player with the ball in his hands of any Clipper. You could argue it. I felt like we were getting the best looks with him on the ball because he is so good in the pick and roll, and his pocket passing is as good as anyone that I've seen play the game, whether it be LeBron, John Stockton, Chris Paul. These guys, pocket passes, Harden excels at that. But, man, we got to have a conversation about Ivica Zubac, who I think is having a really tough season so far. So, in this game, ladies and gentlemen, beyond just bad individual performances, you are seeing in ways what I was saying. There's going to be major growing pains. So, if they answer the question, there are going to be a lot of overreactions to this game. I'm not going to waver on my stance of how I felt before the trade. And this game absolutely doesn't make me waver anymore. But I also know as a fan of basketball that things take time, especially when you change your team this much. And it really just felt like a group of guys that had never touched the floor together ever. Like you put a bunch of talented players on the park and just threw them out there. And they were trying not to step on each other's toes, but at the same time trying to stay aggressive. And when you have a big 4 Like, usually you hear about a big three, a duo. Big fours, you got to go back to when the NBA had like less than 25 teams to really find championship teams with big fours. After about maybe the Showtime Lakers or the Bad Boy Pistons, you get to the 90s, most teams that win championships are 2 to 3 stars. Then you get to the Super Team Warriors with KD, and it was another level. But what you had with that team was you had a guy in Draymond Green who basically just stopped caring about shooting entirely, and then Klay Thompson doesn't need any dribbles, right? You got every single player on the Clippers that's the star, like Westbrook, Harden, Kawhi, Paul, they want to dribble more than Klay or even Steph, quite frankly. And so, the Clippers aren't going to play a big motion offense. Ty Lue, he has a lot of options right now with his playbook. James Harden even talked after the game about how there's unlimited options. The Clippers were still getting good shots on a given possession, but it did not feel fluid at all. It felt like very your turn, my turn. In transition, it felt like everyone had been told to stay aggressive and not worry about, deferring so much, but it's just natural. So guys like Paul George, for example, I thought his shot, like the timing of his shots was just so weird. It felt so random. Like he didn't shoot for the first 2.5 minutes. He shot his first shot at 9:35 of the first quarter. And by the way, the reason why I'm mentioning Paul George first is because he's been our best player this season. Not to say he's our best player, but he has been our best player this season. Then he waits 4 minutes before his next shot attempt. 4 minutes. And by the way, 10 of his 11 shots were jumpers. So he started settling again. And it just felt as though it was like he'd go minutes without touching the ball, and then when he got the ball at times, he would just start pressing and take just very contested shots within a 45-second span. It felt like Kawhi and Paul at portions of this game were like, I'm not going to have the ball as much in my hands because we have Harden here now, so I'm going to look to get going. But it just felt so random. And Ty Lue, with his rotations being a little weird that I'm going to get into later, it made it feel so even more random, more take-turnsy. But so Paul George, right, he goes 4 minutes from 9:35 of the first to his next shot attempt at 5:46 of the first, and he takes 2 shots in that 45-second span. His make was after Harden had come out of the game, and you saw more of a set of PG catching the ball at the foul line area and isolating with Russ, Kawhi, Zoo, and Bones Highland and Mason Plumlee on the court. Similar lineup that we would have had before the trade, and he got his bucket, and I knew it was going in the second he shot it. It just felt good. And then another 4 minutes goes by after he makes that shot, and he doesn't shoot his last shot of the quarter until the 1:42 mark of the first, and he played the whole quarter. So he only shot 4 shots, and he played the whole quarter, and they were all jumpers. Again, it's because of deferring. It's that balance. When it's not seamless, it's very tough, and it's going to take time. But there's no true pecking order. They just, everyone is saying, and fans, media, coaching, you got that talent, you roll the ball out there and just play the game. Just give what the defense, take what the defense gives you. But the game was slow, and the Clippers were struggling to rebound, and they're the ones turning the ball over a lot. So the pace, the fast pace, you knew it was going to go down with Harden. And again, there were some times where he tried to push the pace, but you knew it was going to be a slower kind of tempo with him. And so the Clippers, fast break points wise, they got absolutely crushed in this game. They got crushed on the glass because we are inherently smaller and more guard heavy now. And you know that Ty Lue has a conviction for guards. And we don't have Terrence Mann, which makes things worse. And then Mason Plumlee got hurt, which we'll talk about later. But, it was just kind of a mess. Like, I'm not a huge fan, and even people that are pro Harden trade, not a huge fan of the big four playing together to start each half. It just feels very redundant. And when, in the second quarter, Harden was in his own lineup without Russell Westbrook, it was, even though it was a terrible defensive lineup, Bones, Norman Powell, James Harden, PJ Tucker, and Mason Plumlee. First of all, Bones Highland, Norman Powell, and Harden cannot be on the court together, especially with Plumlee as their backline protection. And PJ Tucker, who can't jump over a binder right now. And I like PJ Tucker as a guy, but he is past it, man. He is cooked. He's a serious downgrade from Rocco and Nico. Nico, by the way, who had a fantastic debut in Philly. But you had Harden cooking in that beginning of the second quarter. That was probably his best stretch of the game, where he had 7 straight points after not shooting the ball once in the first and only shooting the ball once in the fourth, when he was 6 for 8 from the field. So you honestly wanted Harden to be more aggressive, but again, he's not trying to step on anyone's toes so much. So it's just a really tough balance. And when you watch this team play, they were all over the place. It looked like, Ty's calling out a bunch of sets and trying to get everybody their shots. But honestly, I think Ty needs to just let them play a little more. Just let them call out their own stuff and just let Russ or Harden, whoever's bringing up the ball, free flow it a little bit. I think Ty over the last, I want to say since about midway through last season, he's been calling a lot more sets on plays. I feel like he gave Reggie Jackson a lot of freedom looking back. And I think he kind of needs to do that a little bit more with this team. But overall, my takeaway, Clippers looked out of sorts because it's a brand new team. They had 20 turnovers in the game. One point, there was Norman Powell and PJ Tucker just running into each other in the corner for a turnover. It was a very clear sign of a team that was growing with each other, did not know how to play with each other. And now, because we made this trade, thankfully it's early in the season. But we're back at the point where now we got to learn how to play together. Now you're going to see some tinkering from Ty. And coming up, going to continue to talk about the game and the actual holes that have been left in the team after the trade, things that I think go beyond just a one-game sample size. Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Try to bet on the Clippers to win the championship. 5th highest odds after the Harden trade. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of options, including over-unders, player props, spreads, and more. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so let's talk about the real holes in the team. Now, my first issue with the trade was that Russ and Harden, it feels weird in the sense that they have 2 better players to give the ball to. Everybody wanted to push back on me like I was saying Harden and Russ can't coexist, like I didn't watch basketball when Houston played. Believe it or not, I've been watching basketball besides Clipper games for a long time, and I saw that Harden and Russ were fine in Houston. The point I was trying to make to everybody was that we have 2 better players that are inherently going to defer to them a little bit more because they want to make them feel comfortable too. And I felt as though the balance of shot distribution and roll was really good with what we had. But now we have Harden, who's a better playmaker than that of Russ, and the more times that Harden has the ball running pick and roll, running the offense, the more possessions we have Russ off the ball. And despite the fact that he's shooting 38% from 3 this season, and he has bought in more as an off-ball player, whether it be screening or cutting, a lot of times he's chilling on the block, getting ready for an offensive rebound, and we don't have another center or a big that can stretch the floor. So we have 2 guys sitting around the paint, which would make life harder for Kawhi and Paul. But it's really going to make life a little bit harder for the James Zoo spread pick and roll because it's not that spread when the guy is sitting on the block. So when Zoo's rolling to the basket, somebody like the big may be able to take away 2 at once because Russ is not that far away since he's right on the block as well while Zoo's rolling on the opposite block. So you got a guy that's a big like Mitchell Robinson that has so much length. He can basically get across the key in 1 step. So it just makes everything harder for Harden and for everybody else when you have Russ off the ball more, which is why people are saying Russ should go to the bench. Russ's fans want Harden to go to the bench. I'm not going to speak on that right now because, as I've said, from what I've been told, Russ will not go to the bench. And plus, if we're being real, before Harden came here, I know it's a smaller sample size against not as very many good teams, but there's no reason since Russ came here that you should say he should be demoted to the bench. But I get it. If you're not big on his game, which a lot of Clipper fans aren't, like I'm not big on Harden's game. I think Harden might be a better player, but I like what Russ brings to the table. I think the way we were playing in terms of the speed, and it wasn't just like we're running and gunning all the time. I think it was just a faster pace that worked in terms of defense leading to offense. And I think the defensive personnel we had was really good. I'm not saying that Robert Covington is this lockdown defender, but the way he started the season, when you have three guys that are 6'8 plus flying around, and then your smallest guy is a 6'3 absolute freak athlete like Westbrook, it's a little better than having two guards, one of which, look, God bless James Harden for the way he was trying in this game, but as the game went on, you saw that he can't guard at the point of attack. And off ball, he gets lost. And if we're being real, I got to call Paul George out too. He let his missing shots, which, by the way, I say the rhythm thing, but Paul George just missed shots too. He's going to be better than that. I guarantee it. 2 for 11 is just not good enough. But again, when you have guys that are trying to make each other feel good. So when I said the chemistry is going to be worse, I didn't mean that players are going to not like each other. I meant that it's not seamless. So guys are going to try to, let each other eat, but it's very take-turnsy. It's not a beautiful fluid motion system like the Warriors ran with their 4 stars. When you watch Denver play, you see this harmony. You know what I'm saying? It's not like that. And even at its best, I don't think it's going to be like that. There's going to be things that happen with this team, whether it be Russ goes to the bench or we bring in another forward that makes our team better defensively. There's going to be things that happen. I don't think even at its best, and even at its best, I think it'll be an amazing offense that will just be isolation killers because we have 3 guys that are fantastic in isolation, and we'll have a pecking order where Kawhi is taking the most shots, Paul George second, and then Harden and Russ, so on and so forth. My thing is this. If you want to just play free-flowing basketball, just take whatever the defense gives on a possession-by-possession basis, then the shot attempts are going to look kind of wonky in terms of one night it could be Kawhi that leads it. One night it could be Paul George. One night Russ could be shooting more than Paul George. But if you want to have a clear pecking order, then you got to tell Kawhi that he's got to be more demanding of the ball. Like one shot in the fourth quarter is not good enough. Kawhi Leonard played the least amount of minutes in the first half, which I have a huge problem with, and then one shot in the second and fourth quarter. The only quarter he was uber aggressive were the first and third. He started off missing threes, super flat, short on every single one in the first quarter. He was 0 for 3 from deep. But in the third quarter, where the Clippers had their highest scoring quarter with 30 points, Kawhi Leonard shot 9 times and had 11 points in that quarter. So, again, aggressive Kawhi is best for the Clippers, and that was one of the reasons why I was a little skeptical of Harden, but I was more worried about PG's rhythm because I think Kawhi can get to his rhythm just with his shot selection. Problem with Paul George is he needs such a perfect mix to me to get the best out of him. I don't want him being too passive off the ball, but then I also don't want him just pressing bad shots because he's not getting enough of the touches that he likes. So he feels as though he needs to really force the issue. So I talked about his first quarter shot selection. Let's talk about the second. He played the last 7 minutes and 44 seconds of the second quarter. He shot his first shot right away when he came back into the game. And then he doesn't shoot for 4 minutes. And then he doesn't shoot for another 3. It's too spaced out. And then when he gets the ball, he's not shooting good shots. And this is the result of having another star. I'm sorry to all the people that are going to get mad at me for saying it. This is what it is. This is exactly what I was saying. But the thing is, it's early, and it's only going to get better. I promise you that. I promise you that. I'm not saying I was right and everybody that wanted Harden was wrong. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying what I was saying had some validity, and you're seeing it, and it's going to take time. Then in the third quarter, he doesn't shoot for the first 6 minutes and 50 seconds of the quarter. He finally shoots at 5 minutes of 11 seconds and then waits another 2 minutes to shoot. And then in the fourth quarter, he didn't shoot for the first 4 minutes he was in and then shot 2 shots in 30 seconds, and then that was it. By the way, Ty Lue waved the white flag with 5 minutes to go in the game in a 15-point game when we had 4 star-caliber players on our team. That was embarrassing. The first game we have James Harden, you are waving the white flag. I just think that's ridiculous. And you know what? The turnovers were a huge reason why. Zubac, our center, had 5 turnovers. Let's talk about Zubac, who James Harden should be the guy that helps him out the most. James Harden's first pass as a Clipper, I think it was his first pass. It was one of the first 2. He literally threw the ball either around Mitchell Robinson's leg or through his legs. It looked like through his legs in live time. It was a dime, an absolute dime. And Zubac, I've been calling him out this season for this. He waits too long to go up. And he hesitated and got fouled and split at the line. He had a dunk, wide open dunk. Harden, I think maybe he wasn't even expecting the pass, but Zoo looks like he has lost all his confidence. He's not even following through on all his jump hooks and push shots. His spacing decisions in terms of when he's diving in the basket are all wrong. He's getting offensive interferences, moving screens. His rim protection doesn't look as commanding. He's not dunking the ball. He's not playing with an ounce of confidence. He's not catching the ball frequently. It's a mess. It truly is a mess. You're going to need a lot better from him. This is quite frankly not good enough. I see Clipper fans talking about trading him and stuff like that now. Like, come on, Zoo. He doesn't look like he's gotten any better. That's my issue. And Mason Plumlee, we're going to get into his injury in a second, but he looked a little bit better than Zoo. Now, as far as Westbrook goes, I thought he was pretty good in the first quarter. He was very aggressive, getting into the mid-range area, posting up a bit, and he was handling the ball. But he had 6 field goal attempts in the first, was efficient, 8 the rest of the game. The thing is, that doesn't sound like a bad thing or anything serious, but the problem is you have an aggressive Russ that's gotten going, and then now he's going to defer because he's trying to also let other guys get going. So it's just finding the pecking order and also going with the flow and just hooping, just hooping and taking what the defense gives. It's tough. So, and by the way, let's talk about the turnovers, right? Russell Westbrook, one of them was just he should have shot the ball on the pick and roll. He passes Zoo. Mitchell Robinson was still connected to him. Another one, he ran into Josh Hart. I think that was just a great defensive play personally. Classic example of Russ just going too fast. But, to me, if it's not in a crucial moment, you live with it. It happens. Russ has been doing that his whole career. But I usually like when he tries to push pace. And then the last one, I don't remember the fourth one, but the last one, he just threw a really lazy pass to James Harden that he had telegraphed the entire way. And then there was another one where he was posting up on the left wing, and Zoo should have kind of just stayed right inside the foul line, but he dove while Quentin Grimes had already been cheating heavily on Harden from the weak side corner. So there was 2 guys, besides Westbrook's man that was guarding him, that were ready to collapse on him, and he had really no window to pass. You saw Russ saying to Zoo, stay there. He was angry about it. And then you have Paul George, who didn't even get that many pick and roll reps at all. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Paul George in the pick and roll, but again, I think the balance that we had found with the team we had before the trade was the perfect amount of reps of like mid-post touches, then pick and roll, just working off the ball quickly off screens. I think that was the perfect balance. In this game, he threw one pass in the first quarter that he tried to whip around guys like he was magic in semi-transition. It was absurd. And then there was another one that was actually a pretty decent pass. Maybe put a little too much mustard on it. Norman Powell should have caught it. And then one bad pass in the pick and roll, just good defense by the Knicks, active hands. That's always bound to happen. Maybe one bad read by Paul. It wasn't even a bad read, just one bad pass in the pick and roll by PG per game. And then the last turnover was an outlet pass that he tried to thread underneath Mitchell Robinson's arm, a bounce pass up the floor like 30 feet ahead of him, like he was LeBron. It was Paul George with the audacity in there. Like you knew there was a game that was coming with Paul George making reckless decisions. But coming up, going to be talking about Mason Plumlee's injury. It really turned the game, and also elaborating on Ty Lue's rotations and what the bench did for the team. Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about the Jace case. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. I'm thankful for that connection we have, and today I want our chat to be a little more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Being on extended travel, bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue. You're covered, my friend. You don't have to worry about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, Viagra, or Revatio prescription. And this is possible because of our friends at Jace Medical. Go online right now at jacemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jace. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered antibiotic kit. I feel secure now, Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. If you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to JaceMedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's get a little bit more into the rotations and how the bench played. So the lineups, wanted to see how this would go. I expected that we'd always have two of the big four on the court at once. I always thought you'd have one of Russ or Harden and one of Russ or Paul George or Kawhi on the court at once, but that was not the case. At the 5:17 mark of the first quarter, we took James Harden and Ivica Zubac out and replaced them with Bones and Mason. Okay, no issues there. I thought the thinking behind that was would have James and Zoo playing together so James can put him on a platter, being that he's so good in the pick and roll, because the difference between Russ and Harden in the pick and roll is teams are going to keep going under the screen with Russ, whereas they have to respect Harden's jumper, so they go over the screen. I thought that was the plan there. From 2:29, at the 2:29 mark, Russ and Kawhi came out and were replaced by Harden, who came right back into the game, and Norm Powell. And then when PG went out, just a minute and 8 seconds later for PJ Tucker, we had a lineup of Bones, Harden, Norm, PJ, and Mason. And thankfully, our defense in the first half wasn't that horrendous. I thought our effort was good. And the Knicks, we just kind of got bailed out a little bit by the fact that the Knicks offense was very mediocre. But that lineup is going to get crushed, in my opinion, going forward. I also think Bones Highland, as much as I love him, and this is part of the reason why I like Bones Highland, so I wanted him to develop. This is part of the reason why I was kind of against the trade, is I don't really see much utility for him now. I think he's a solid spot-up shooter that gives you some on-ball value, but he's such a rhythm player too. I think he wants the ball in his hands. He likes to dance. And he's not a great off-ball catch-and-shoot guy, and I think he's going to lose his rhythm too. And then on defense, he is improved. He's decent at best, but he's not good. So you have a lot of negative defenders, and if you want to stagger Russ and Harden and then Terrence comes back, does Bones Highland really have a role in this team in terms of real minutes? I like him. He adds pace. We're not even going to play as fast anymore. I'm just saying. I really like Bones, but this was the consequence of getting Harden and Russ. Now, the people that don't like Bones' game, they're gonna say, well, Bones Highland shouldn't have been part of a championship rotation anyway. I was putting my faith in that he could play passable defense and give us burst off the bounce, get to the hole, make plays, because he was really looking better in the pick and roll playmaking. I don't care what anyone says. Okay, he made some bad reads in this game with some jump passes. Again, I felt like he was pressing the issue too. 2 for 9. I felt like he was forcing it. And I haven't said that about Bones when he had the ball controlling the offense in the second unit. I think that's what Bones' ceiling is to be like a Jamal Crawford guy coming off the bench, playmaking and pick and roll, as a scoring threat, but also leveraging his scoring with his passing ability, which is better than Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams in my eyes. Natural passing ability. Decision-making, different conversation. That comes with time. But now it's really going to hinder that. He got a couple of chances to play on the ball, and it just felt like it wasn't really in transition. It didn't really feel like he had much control like he did in the past, where before the trade and even after the trade, the day of the trade, the next day of the trade, we played Orlando and he started, he had 4 great games to begin the season. These last 2 have been pretty rough. I thought he was really poor in this game. 2 for 9 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and he had 3 turnovers. Just 5 points, 4 assists, 3 turnovers in 22 minutes of play. Rough night. And then Norman Powell, who I thought he still has value to this team because of his off-ball ability. You know, he can catch and shoot. He can attack closeouts. He hit 2 threes in the first half, and he ended up having 4 threes in the game. 5 for 7 from the field, 4 for 6 from deep, 14 points. That sounds good, but he also had 3 turnovers. And again, he's been trying on defense, but he's average at best. And we had no Norm left to right curls that I can remember in this game. It just feels as though he's also getting hindered, and he might be redundant on this team. We have too many guards now. And let's be honest, in the second half, especially when Mason came out, because I thought Mason was playing pretty decent. He was pretty active, was making better reads in the 4-on-3 situations than Zoo, going up quicker than Zoo. When Mason got injured, and man, this was bad because we were only down. We were up 66-64. He got injured with 4 minutes and 10 seconds left in the third. We kind of collapsed after that because when Zoo came out of the game, we put Musa in. It was a tie game going into the fourth, and we got absolutely crushed on the inside. They went up by 7. We put Zoo back in with the starters, and we still got crushed. And I think our actual star players got tired. They had to work too hard. I think Julius Randle had his best game of the season, and he was being really aggressive, especially in transition off Clipper turnovers and even in the half court. And I think Julius Randle would have been one of the few power forwards that actually gave us problems before the trade even. But, man, Nico and Rocco would have been better than what we had out there in this game because you're just putting too much onus on Paul George and Kawhi. And I thought as the game went on, Russ, Paul George, and Harden were doing a lot of ball watching on the rebounds. Because a lot of times, people are going to blame Zoo because he only had 7 rebounds, 8.7 rebounds for him on 3-for-3 shooting. But 5 turnovers for your center is insane. 5 turnovers for your center, then you get 4 from Russ and 4 from Paul, and then 3 from Bones and 3 from Norm. It's just too much. And the Knicks took advantage in full. Their bench was awesome. Josh Hart, Emmanuel Quickley, even Isaiah Hartenstein, and DiVincenzo was everywhere in the second half. And let's be honest, the Clippers just got outworked in the second half. Mike Fratello and Brian Seaman even said it. They got completely outworked. The Knicks are one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league. If you watch their series against Cleveland last year, you could see that. Jarrett Allen, it wasn't just Zubats that got mauled on the boards. Jarrett Allen got mauled on the boards by Mitchell Robinson in the playoffs last year, and he had 9 offensive rebounds in the game. That's still way too much. 13 points, 15 rebounds, and 4 steals on 6-for-10 shooting for Mitchell Robinson. But when you have, the Mason Plumlee go down, and you have no bigger forwards against a team like New York that's going to crash the glass. It's going to try to score on the inside because their shooting's not that great. You're going to be in trouble. And this team clearly has a weakness. It goes beyond, just it's the first game. We gave up our big size, our weak side rim protection. We're relying on Zoo to bail out guys a lot, and now our point of attack defense got worse because we're going to be running more guard-heavy lineups because that's what our roster looks like. And Ty Lue loves tinkering, so he even said after the game, it's going to take 10 games to test it out. So we're back to tinkering Ty again. And the reason why I think we didn't stagger, let me actually continue with that before this show ends. 5:17 we go to the second quarter. Paul George and Kawhi returned at the 7:48 mark of the second for Bones and James Harden. So for a minute and 29 seconds, we had no Russ or Harden. Only scored 2 points. Harden returned for the final 2 minutes and 32 seconds, and we still led by 4 at halftime. It just felt like our defense was high effort, but the Knicks' offense was just trash. Our offense just didn't convince me at all, though. And then in the third quarter, we did the same thing by putting Mason and Bones in for James and Zoo at 5 minutes and 27 seconds. And then we put in PJ and Norm for Russ and Kawhi at 1:49 in the third to give us a lineup of Bones, Norm, PJ, and Zoo for 31 seconds before Harden subbed in for PG. So we had a lineup of Moussa Diabate, PJ Tucker, James Harden, Norman Powell, and Bones Highland to start the fourth quarter. And quickly, we went from a tie game after James Harden had a step-back 3 to end the third to a 7-point deficit within less than 2 minutes. Then we put in Kawhi and went small ball 5 for a minute or so. Then we brought Zoo, Russ, and Paul George in for Bones, PJ, and Norm at 9:38. But what I'm questioning is, why do we have Harden and Russ out of the game at the same time at any point? It's I don't know. I think you know what it is. I think they're running Harden with the bench unit like that. I think it's just putting different lineups out there and getting the data. I think that's what this is going to be this next 10 games. He's going to try to get the data of what works and what doesn't. And what I saw in this game is that Harden and Russ play better without each other on the court with this team. That's what I saw. I love Russ's fit with Paul. I like Harden as just our best pick and roll player, but what we gave up is we're going to be weak on the interior. And in the point of attack, we're going to be weaker. How much is Terrence Mann going to play when he comes back? That's going to be on Ty. So now, before we had a roster where Ty he didn't have as much flexibility, and it actually helped him. Now, he's going to be put under the fire because it's not going to be easy to deal with this. It's not going to be easy to make this work, in my opinion. So, The boys stunk it up those from the 9-minute 38-second mark to the 4:25 where everybody came out. It ended with a Harden turnover, live ball turnover. He had 2 in the game. And that was it. We got absolutely blitzed. But the takeaway is Mason, he couldn't even walk off the floor. He had to be carried off the floor. So that really worries me. What do we do? Is Musa just going to play? Are we going to play P.J. Tucker as a small ball 5? I don't like it. Let's talk about the lines. I already said Norman Powell, Bones Highland, and Mason Plumlee. He was the only player, Mason Plumlee, that actually got real minutes, not garbage time minutes. That was plus and the plus minus. So just to tell you, he was playing well. He was a plus 10. 2 points, 2 boards, 1 for 1, but his impact was good, active. P.J. Tucker, I just don't know his value. He missed both of his open threes, doesn't seem to get much elevation at all, and his defense is not the same. He had 2 points in 11 minutes, and then Zoo, I just hope he gets his confidence back. I don't know what it's going to take, but Westbrook, he was efficient, 8 for 13 from the field, 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 dimes, but 4 turnovers, and I thought he was okay. Not great. I thought he gambled too much on defense too, and I thought his rebounding was poor for his standards. James Harden, I thought he was good offensively. I thought he got kind of gassed defensively as the game wore on. And I think his presence just complicates things, but I liked the way he was trying to buy in. I think his effort wasn't poor, and he really did try to play off the ball to start the first quarter. If anything, he was a little too passive because he shot so well, 66%. And I love that he was shooting the mid-range. Like, when Harden's shooting the mid-range and not foul baiting too much, he only had 1 foul baiting attempt, flailing. And I actually don't mind watching him play. 6 for 9 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, 6 assists, 3 boards to go along with his 17 points. And then Paul George was just horrific. 10 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, 4 turnovers. I think the rhythm thing is very real, but at the same time, he doesn't need to settle so much. 10 out of 11 of your shots shouldn't be jumpers. I don't care how clogged the paint is. Just long jumpers, too. And then he can't just because your jumper's not falling doesn't mean you don't try very hard on defense. There were times where he was late rotating, where he was just behind, and his head was in the clouds. Come on, Paul. You've been amazing so far defensively this season. What's going on? And then Kawhi, who shot once in the fourth, which is not acceptable. He took care of the ball at least. But, Paul's 2 for 11 and 1 for 6 from 3, by the way. Kawhi, 18 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 8 for 16 from the field. Shot 50%, 2 for 6 from 3. No free throw attempts. But he's shooting 50%. He's scoring 18 points. Like, it's not enough. It's just the shot distribution. It's going to be something because you got cooks in the kitchen now. And the Clippers shot 49% from the field, 34% from 3. That's not even that bad. But they got killed in the possession battle because you turned the ball over 22 times. And the Knicks shot 15 more shots, and they shot 2 more free throws, and they were 94% from the line. 47% from the field, 39% from 3, and 94% from the line for the Knicks, who beat the Clippers by a score of 111-97, outscoring them 35-21 in the fourth, and killed them on the offensive glass 18-7 and had 35 points off Clipper turnovers. They destroyed the Clippers in the fast break points department and points in the paint department. 26-6 in fast break points. So again, that pace is going to slow down. Less Bones, less Russ with the ball in their hands, just inherently with Harden. And then points in the paint, 56-18. However, I think the Knicks are a matchup problem for the Clippers, and we're not going to see them besides one more time this season because of Randall and Mitchell Robinson in the paint, and they have a tendency to offensive rebound, and our front court and size in the front court now is going to be our flaw. But Mason, get well soon, man. It's only going to get better, Clipper Nation. Trust me. Let me know what you think in the comments. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper content. I went live as well on my own channel, so if you want to see maybe a different perspective of what I said, go check it out. I was a little more calculated for this one. I went back and looked at plays to get more specific for you. So, and by the way, I'm recording this at like 5 in the morning. Like, I got home from the airport to record this at 5 in the morning. Just know, like, I'm trying my best, guys. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.